1 minute ago. A seismic shock has just torn through the carefully managed atmosphere of Westminster. This isn't a corruption scandal. It's not a financial market crash, but a televised moment so explosive that history will record it as the day the rules changed. Prime Minister Keir, the most powerful man at number 10 Downing Street, has just been frozen into silence on live national television. He stood there, jaw-locked, staring blankly into the camera, utterly unable to speak. It wasn't caused by anger, nor by the theatrics of parliamentary debate, but by the lethal precision of a single statement from Prince William. "I want to create a world where my son is proud of what we do." That is how it began. Seemingly gentle, but the conclusion was a sledgehammer. The British monarchy is famous for its golden rule. Never interfere in politics, never debate publicly, and maintain absolute neutrality. But that rule held sacred for over 50 years has just been shattered in a heartbeat. And the man holding the sledgehammer was none other than the future king himself. What exactly happened? Why did 11 simple words carry enough force to paralyze the British Parliament? Let's rewind exactly 3 minutes to a place no one expected this attack to come from. Inside the House of Commons, Prime Minister's questions PMQs was unfolding according to the usual script. Keir stood at the dispatch box confidently defending his controversial national housing initiative. His voice boomed with authority, asserting that this was a bold step to solve the crisis for millions of working families. Labour MPs nodded in agreement while the opposition jarred standard theatre. Everything seemed under Starmer's control. He believed he was winning. He believed no one would dare stand in the way of a newly elected government with a massive majority. But then a strange sound rippled through the chamber, not from a microphone, but from hundreds of smartphones. Ping, ping, ping. A wave of breaking news notifications landed simultaneously on the laps of every MP. The glow of screens illuminated the dim chamber like fireflies in a storm. A terrifying shift began to take hold. Starmer's own cabinet ministers, seated right behind him for support, suddenly stopped cheering. They looked down. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's expression shifted from calm to absolute horror. She covered her mouth with her hand, eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe what she was reading. Beside her, David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary known for his eloquence, simply shook his head slowly, looking like a man watching a train derail in slow motion. Starmer felt the temperature drop behind him. The raucous noise of the Commons vanished, replaced by a deadly silence. A silence heavier than any shouting match. He faltered. He glanced across the aisle at the Conservative benches. They weren't laughing. They were looking at him with a mix of pity and predatory glee. Rishi's, the opposition leader, slowly lowered his phone, looking up at Starmer with a half-smile that said, "You just walked into a trap." Starmer tried to continue. We must prioritize." His voice cracked. He saw the ticker tape running on the press gallery screen. Prince William declares, "We lose ourselves." In that moment time stopped. Sarah froze. His hands gripped the old oak dispatch box so hard his knuckles turned white. His jaw ground shut, fighting back a tremor of rage or fear. He blinked rapidly, his lawyer's brain trying to calculate the damage in milliseconds. But it was useless. 11 words. Just 11 words. But they were sharper than any knife in Westminster. They weren't just a critique. They were a verdict. And this is exactly what Prince William said on live TV. Standing in the center of Manchester, right next to the homeless people, the government swore to protect. He didn't shout. He didn't frown. He spoke with the deadly calm of a monarch. When government policy prioritizes speed over heritage, we don't just lose land, we lose ourselves. That sentence rang out like thunder in a clear sky. It didn't just attack a housing policy. It attacked the legitimacy of the Starr government. It implied that this administration was selling the nation's soul for short-term statistics. But why did William do it? Why did the beautiful prince choose this precise moment to pull the trigger? And what was hidden behind the phrase "lose land"? It wasn't a metaphor. It was a naked truth about a political conspiracy being kept in the dark. A conspiracy buried on page 47 of a secret document Starmer thought no one would ever read. To understand why Prince William's 11-word statement detonated like political dynamite, you have to look at the plan that set this entire crisis in motion. The media called it Labour's National Housing Initiative. On the surface, it sounded like a bold, almost noble move. Build 300,000 affordable homes across the country to tackle the growing housing crisis. For weeks, Starmer promoted it as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reshape Britain for working families. Voters nodded along. Even critics admitted the idea had potential. But that was before anyone reached page 47. Buried deep in the 200-page policy document, far from the glossy headlines and press photos, was a list of 14 historic sites marked for immediate compulsory purchase. These weren't abandoned warehouses or derelict parking lots. These were heritage-rich locations, including properties with direct ties to the royal family. One entry in particular set off alarms that still haven't stopped ringing. A pristine stretch of Duchy of Cornwall farmland in Devon, land that has been under royal stewardship for over 700 years. The wording in the document was clinical, cold, almost surgical reallocation of surplus Crown-associated land to support national housing expansion. To anyone else it might have read like bureaucratic jargon, but to people who understand royal land management, it was the equivalent of grabbing a chainsaw and carving through centuries of tradition. When palace advisors first read it, one senior official reportedly physically recoiled. The reaction wasn't theatrical. It was instinctive. The monarchy rarely steps into political matters, and the government rarely pushes directly against Crown estates. There is an unspoken boundary in British governance. A mutual respect built over centuries. Page 47 didn't just cross that line. It bulldozed straight through it with no warning. The Duchy of Cornwall's farmland wasn't merely symbolic. It supports local communities, funds charitable programs, and is tied to a web of economic, cultural, and familial responsibilities. William, as the Duke of Cornwall, oversees it not as a landlord, but as a custodian of heritage. He views himself as a temporary guardian of land meant to be passed down untouched to future generations. So when Labour marked it for seizure without consultation, it wasn't just a policy decision. It was an intrusion into the heart of a centuries-old constitutional relationship. It was a declaration of war on the concept of heritage itself. But here is where the scandal deepens into something darker.